Good morning once again, my beloved students of GE20. And today is July 10, 2020. Time is exactly 2:57 a.m. I just finished my PowerPoint, and today is the best time to record because of the silence of the dawn. So I'm the only one talking here, but my children are still awake. They're playing with their cousin. What they call this? On a cell phone. Dota. No, it's not Dota. It's COC or something. Anyway, I hope everything is well with you. May God is keeping you safe and providing all our needs. So our goal for these following months is just to survive and to keep ourselves healthy. And we've heard news that the Black Death pandemic is beginning again in China, and we hope that it won't reach us, and if ever it does, it won't inflict much damage. We've been through enough. A lot of people has been losing jobs or dying, uh, get suffering from hunger and loneliness since the entertainment and tourism is held on, hold off for the moment. So there's nothing much we can do rather than just to survive. But we are fortunate because we are given this opportunity to study. We have internet connection, we have laptops even to continue our studies in this case. Okay, so I am tasked. This will be my last report, or we call it lecture, or the term probably, because you were already given your specific topics to report on. So I would really be uh, excited to listen. So far, I've heard some of the first few reporters, and I think they're doing well with their topics. They did lots of research to go with it, and they had been creative with their PowerPoint presentations, and they were able to speak confidently with their reports. Okay, so I am tasked to report on this topic. Uh-huh. Am I sharing this? Wait a minute. Uh-huh. No, I'm not sharing the screen yet. There. Yo. Okay, we're on. So this is the topic assigned to me. Mm. Okay, so visual saturation. Look at the picture here. What do you see? Right? So it's a notice board with lots of posted uh, paper with different letters and words and probably different types of messages. On the other side, we see posts, billboards made of, I don't know, Japanese characters, so probably it's in Japan. It's not in the Philippines. So, does it look like simple to you? So what do you see here? Okay, so first we see an ordinary notice board located in an ordinary city street. So it makes no use of digital technology. It has no cunning printing devices used, and no sound or movement even. So it makes no special use of linear perspective too. But can we say that it's a simple visual image? No, still it's because of the noise, or what you call this, not noise but distractions going on. It makes reading difficult. So what are the things that distracts the reading individual? First, the multiple shapes, textures, and sizes of the papers attached to the board makes it difficult to read. The complex layering of the individual parts, the range of fonts, styles, and layouts, the various colors not reproduced in the picture. These are the things that add to the distractions for us to get the message of the intended message of the visual. So let's talk about the complex process of reading. It's not just the material, but the process in itself of reading is quite difficult. So, for example, the questions we ask is, where do you begin to read this text? Shall I read from below, going top, or shall I start in the center, going out? Or shall I begin from the left, going to the right? That's a decision to make for us readers. How do you read it sensibly? How do I make sense of what I see? There's so many distractions, right? We have people, probably there will be cars or buses, there'll be doors that you hear opening and closing from those cars or from those buses. You take note of the traffic lights, change color, and that means change of instructions for the people around the vicinity. You see the texture, the shape, the color of the wall, the pavement. Sometimes they can catch attention too, and they become distractions. Look at that. Where do I focus my attention on whenever you are in such big urban city? There seems to be no end to the variety and complexity of the visual matter before our eyes. So, but which era has more visual complexity? Shall we say that our visual images right now are more difficult or more complicated compared to those of the past? The art historian James Elkins argues that we are in fact less visually complex now than in earlier periods. Really? So what's the explanation for that? For us to understand this, let's go back to the timeline of complexity. First, where does complexity really originate? So based on history, it emerges at the Renaissance, which developed new visual technologies and systems of perception till the late 19th century. Then, with the Western principles of thought and perception had moved away from the visual to the written forms. This happens towards the beginning of the 20th century. So they produce what he calls the generations of speed readers, can only read simple visual sentences. So there has now become a shift at the beginning of the 20th century, a shift on reading words, so thereby producing speed readers but they are limited to simple visual sentences. So these are the pictures of the works of Renaissance that are really, there's so much complications. Look at that Mona Lisa, for example, this one. Sometimes we are just focused on the picture of Mona Lisa, but we forget to consider the background, which has a story behind it. There's a bridge there are roads, waterfalls, which are somehow part of the past of the artist itself, or Leonardo da Vinci himself. Now look at this sculpture by Pieta. So these things are really a complicated view. You can look at it for an hour or so and you'll still find new things within the particular frame of image. Then going on to the modern times, we are now certainly digital communication technologies, or some like video games, MTV, web browsers, encouraging a fleeting and flickering glance rather than a concentrated gaze associated with art. Nowadays, we can't even stand for like 15 minutes of a particular work of art. Oh no, I mean 15 seconds. So, things had become easier for us to look. It's designed that way. So the use of social media and other platforms, the use of the written words, newspapers, magazines, even in the internet itself, we do a lot of reading. Even the newspapers nowadays can be read through the new internet. Okay, so there is also a lesser attention to arts nowadays. They are just more on words or other visual stuff that are not related to arts. So according to Jeanette Winterson in Art Objects, she suggested that her readers try spending an hour looking at a single work in an art gallery and promises great return on this investment. Can you do that? Looking at a particular work of art for an hour, and later on you'll reap your investment in terms of time, or the benefits that you get, the enjoyment that you get from the specific work of art. But nowadays, viewing standard in museums is just 15 seconds per artwork, and that's not enough to really appreciate the work of art. Its color combinations, the lines, the contours that were employed by the artist himself will just go to nothing, vanish in thin air. So how about you? When you go to exhibits or museums, how long do you linger on a particular work of art? My next topic is about images as signs. Yeah, I just picked out these funny images. Soon I'll be adding a portion of posts or series of pictures, of funny pictures as images. Do not enter, so specific for entrance only. So upon reading these types of materials, how will you react? Right? No trespassing, violators will be shot, survivors will be shot again. So this one also is funny. Don Payton, not running for anything, he just wanted a sign. Probably owns the land. And there's this stop sign wherein if you are to take this seriously, once you see the sign, you're not supposed to move anywhere. Going up, down, left or right. Just stay there. Okay, so so these new concepts in looking at visual arts were supported by these philosophers and historians. So we begin with Martin Jay in 1993. He developed the notion that we are no longer as visually complex as people in earlier periods, not because of fewer visual text or simpler designs, but because of using non-visual analytic devices. And this was supported by Friedrich Nietzsche in 1986, where he said, "I do not myself believe that anyone has looked into the world with an equally profound degree of suspicion." So what do you mean by that? He believes that people were just looking at things haphazardly, like fleeting attention to any work of art, for example, in that sense. Then let's look at Martin Heidegger, who was likewise skeptical about the extent to which we can rely on visual skills, and famously opposed to the centrality of seeing subject in Western thought. He argued that oral perception was more reliable than visual, because sometimes our vision is easily deceived. We misinterpret a lot of things by what we see. So oral perception is more effective. So blind people have really sensitive hearings that has been developed. They were forced to develop that because of the lack of sight. With the linguistic turnoff of the 20th century, it is a move within the humanities to focus on literary text. So there was the focus on novels, on short stories. Then to use the analytical devices associated with literary text to make sense of society, visual images, individual psychology, and so on. So this is where analytical devices were employed for us to make sense of what we see, either in society or in visual images. Then we have this linguistic turn of the 20th century, where all social practices, or in other words, were understood as meaning-making practices, or we call it semiotic events. Then, with this linguistic turn, visual texts are also considered to communicate according to linguistic rather than iconographical rules. What do you mean by iconographical or iconography? So iconography, according to Webster's dictionary, is the visual images and symbols used in a work of art, or the study or interpretation of these. For example, whenever you see that image, for example, that one, what do you mean by that something in their heads? So we just call it a halo, but what does it literally mean? If you are to check on that on history, that represents the sun, because the pagans of old have been worshipping the sun, and it has become embedded in their culture. That even though some were converted into Christianity, they cannot still do away with these iconographical symbols to represent their old ways of worship. Okay, so the iconography of pop culture, for example. So it could also mean the visual images, symbols, or modes of representation collectively associated with a person, cult, or movement. Nowadays, you can tell a Satanist if you see one, because of the tattoos or symbols in their t-shirts that they're wearing. to represent their beliefs. Then semiotics, it has been defined by the previous supporters, is an effective tool for analysis because it deals with signs that even obscure visual images can easily be imbued with some meaning. Can you imagine that? Even those obscure means not clear, so or vague, can still be imbued with some meaning. Okay, so we have the author of this book conducted a survey. So these are the results, the range of interpretations brought about by a rough survey. Okay, so look at the picture. So you can almost smell it. These are rotten eggs, but what does it communicate whenever you see that? So it communicated the idea of decay. Nabubulok. What do you feel whenever you see this? Planets, distance. So it conveys an idea of unthinkable vastness. How do you measure the universe? We are already talking about millions light years. So you know what light years mean? It's the speed of light, the amount of distance that light travels. Can you imagine how many light travels the world in 2.5 seconds? 2.5 times per second. Can you imagine that's how fast the speed of light is? So 2.5 times it travels all over the world per second. You multiply that by 60, and that's how far light has been able to travel for 1 minute, and multiply that for another 60 for 1 hour, multiply that for 24 hours in a day, we multiply that for 365 days a year, so that's a light year. So in 1 year, how long has light already traveled? And to say that the distance of stars are measured by millions of light years away, 8 million light years, 40 million light years. Whoa, it's an unthinkable vastness. It puts me on my knees in worship to the Creator, that you can see how small planet Earth is, and yet here we are. We have everything that we need for life to flourish. Awesome. Then we have volcanic mud pools of Rotorua, New Zealand. Look at that. It's a representation of the exotic beauty.